You were. Like,
Huh?
That's all.
That was all work. That was exactly all work.
Good morning, everyone. I have heard that this is our last meeting. A few of us are excited about it. But let's go ahead and make sure that we get started here and give as much time as we need to go through this process. I want to thank you all, first of all, for the months of work that has gone into getting us to this point today. Is there anything that you'd like to say about that process before we jump into the nuts and bolts here?
I just thank you. Just really thank you for your expertise, your time, your commitment. Thank you. It means everything to us, to me, and ultimately to the state of California. Thank you.
Likewise, we know this task force may be ending, but our work is not. And so we know we're gonna have the recommendations. There's a lot of different avenues that we need to go with this at the state level, the local level, even with internal agencies that can get some of this work done that were identified that don't need to go through a legislative process, right, Director? So, and again, I know I committed to you all that I will start to have monthly or every other month meetings regarding affordable housing in Delaware, because we know it's obviously top of mind for a lot of our constituents and a lot of our Delawareans. So still have that commitment for me, and look forward to this conclusion and then into the rest of the work. Thank you all.
And before I go any further, so I don't risk forgetting, Caitlin and the rest of the DSHA team, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. On behalf of the team.
We especially me, I mean, I've only been showing up for a few weeks here. But the rest of the task force, we show up, we've got experience and thoughts that we brought to the table, but none of that is all that useful if you don't have good staff that is supporting this work. So thank you. And I'd like to welcome you folks from the governor's office, Andrea Allman and Kevin Meyer. Thank you guys for being here as well. So here's how I hope today goes. We have prepared a little bit more than a skeleton at this point of a document that is the report that this task force is looking to submit as its work product and recommendations going forward. Last time we met, we went through a lot of the recommendations, and I think the conversation was really about sort of validating and wordsmithing them. Caitlin has gone back with the DSHA team especially, and then also saw your comment on how we refine that even a step further. Though there are still some pieces that are not part of that report, like membership lists and things like that. The meat of it is was distributed for your review and comment. What we're hoping to do today is get this task force's consolidated consent on those items, making sure that there's broad agreement on what I called last week the front of the book, the main recommendations that this task force is putting forward. We have also last week talked about all of the recommendations from all of the subcommittee work will be included in the back of the book. That is not to suggest that there isn't value and merit in those recommendations, but that distinction being that the front of the book are the action items, the recommendations that this task force feels are most important to highlight when it comes to solving the issue of housing supply and affordable housing production in Delaware. There's a million things probably that we could have put in recommendations, if we had a long enough list. But we want to make sure that our messaging is really clear, about next steps. And so our process today hopefully will be to go through those front of the book items and get general consent from this task force, that they belong in that front of the book. But please keep in mind, I think it's important to know that just because it isn't in the front of the book doesn't mean it doesn't have value, and it will appear in the back of the book. That's number one. Number two, that these are, again, sort of the path forward for the state to follow. I think the best way for us to do that will be sort of a all in favor, sort of voice vote. If anyone feels the need to not support one of the proposals, the best way for us to record that will be in the minutes of the meeting, so that the report can go cleanly as long as it has the support of the task force more broadly. So does that sound like a good path forward for us all? Any questions? Yes, sir.
So generally, everything that was in the front report was agreed upon unanimously by the group. So now we're saying we're gonna put some stuff in the front report that just has majority approval.
No, I don't think anything has moved too far in or out of the front of the book since our last meeting. I think that that was more of a working process. I think this is today a validation process of those recommendations and those items being sort of finally approved by this group.
What about things that were added over the past couple days?
Caitlin, do we have many of those?
Yeah, so I have taken all of the feedback that our task force members have sent to me over the past 2 days and put it into the draft. And so we'll be able to see line by line where people
Okay.
have added things.
So I think so this is a slightly different version, I suppose, than what was agreed to, right, at the last meeting. I think that, so we still have that opportunity to debate those issues, right? If to the extent that they have changed, I think that there should be general consensus moving forward. This should be easy. I think most of where we are, we have talked about, most of the front of the book has a pretty broad consensus at this point.
I think most of the front work has unanimous consensus.
I think so,
With the exception of maybe one or two items that currently aren't in there, but may sneak in there today.
That's fine. And I think the other thing that we wanted to do after we do roll call and sort of establish a quorum, which we probably should have done before I talked about all this. Just got excited. I think we're gonna move public comment to the front, because if we are making sort of final decisions on what is in and out and how this looks, we certainly want the public's comment on that. Caitlin has guaranteed me that it will not go too long. And so without any other comments or questions, you guys good? Let's roll.
All right,
Let's
so-
take attendance. Let's start there.
Director Heckles is present.
Yes.
Senator Huxtable,
I'm here.
Representative Johnson, Senator Hawker. I don't see him online. I think he's absent. Representative Holofsky.
Here.
David Edgel,
Here.
Kim Cole.
Here.
Let's see, Pam Scott. I believe is absent. Sarah Kiefer. Here. Preston Shell,
Here.
Kevin Spence,
Here.
Wes Stefanik.
Here.
Deborah Burgos,
Present.
Mike Ryman,
Here.
Amy Walls. Here. Jerry Heisler.
Here.
Kevin Smith,
Here.
Karen Speakman,
Here.
Rachel Stucker.
Here.
Okay, so we have 17 members present, 2 absent. We do have a quorum.
Meetings, minutes have been passed around. If anybody has any comments or questions or motion to approve.
No move.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you, Wes. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed?
So up next,
Good. Go ahead.
we have public comment. Before we go to public comment, Caitlin, do you have any guidelines for public comment as it relates to the amount of allotted time?
Yes, so traditionally we give folks 2 minutes. I would like to spend at least 20 minutes total on getting public comment, if there is 20 minutes worth. So it is now 10:46. So by 11:06, I would like us to switch gears to reviewing the report.
Sounds good, and I will stop us at 11:06.
Great. So at this time, for folks online, if you would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands raised yet.
We do have someone who signed up in person.
Okay. Mr. Walls, is that you?
As well.
Okay.
Just kind of like right in here so you can get grabbed by the mic.
So I'm gonna share our timer like we normally do.
Whatever you.
Yeah, if you wanna come down to this seat here.
Start it.
I don't know why it went red.
Just hit it again.
Hit it.
There we go.
There you go. It's still red.
Okay. All right, starting the clock.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Joe Walls. I'm the CEO of Veteran Services. We advocate for incarcerated veterans, trying to get them out of prison and treatment and into appropriate housing and reentry services. Online, you had 4 committee reports that I downloaded and went through. I'd like to offer the following comments. First off, I'd like to have you recommend Sonia started a campaign for 1% of the state budget to be appropriated for affordable housing. I think that that's a great idea, and I think that that's something that this task force should comment upon. One of the problems we have with the financing is that people that are on disability, such as myself, or social security or retirement income, when we apply for these heating subsidies or home repair subsidies, our income is too great to apply. For instance, last year I applied for a heating assistance for winterizing my house. And I was told that the $45,000 a year that I make from veteran disability and social security is too much. I was $2,000 over the limit. So naturally, my bills went up because of the cold winter. So I would like to see some kind of not taking into consideration people's bare minimum subsistence money that they get from the VA or Social Security, have that not counted towards their income. We need to do a better focus on, rather than clustering poor people in one area, 200 or 300 unit developments, we need to really focus on distributing them around the neighborhoods. So that, you know, their next door neighbor is somebody that's been more successful in private life. And hopefully they'll be able to learn from them and maybe do the same thing in their own life. You talked about wraparound services, and that's a good reason why you have them clustered at the beginning. Mindy Bacchus of Warriors Helping Warriors, she termed it as triaging people. Taking people off the street, giving them their meds, stabilizing them, then move them to permanent housing. Well, they're not being moved to permanent housing. They're being kept in the shelters. And it's good to keep them in the shelter until they no longer need to stay there. But then they need to be put in permanent housing. We need to do a better job of moving them. I'm running into that problem myself. And we need some type of oversight, some type of whistleblower statute, some type of regulation to allow private people to step forward when they see abuse or mismanagement or waste, to be able to bring that to the attention of the appropriate authorities. I consistently have problems with the way that regulations are being interpreted and implemented by the Delaware State Housing Authority. Right now, I'm going back and forth with the Delaware State Housing Authority's attorney about it. I'm not getting the incentives, the utility, allotments. There's a lot of things that I'm missing that I'm entitled to and I'm not getting. Outside of that, I want to thank you guys for taking your time. I know you're all busy people. And from the veteran community, I really appreciate the fact that you've allowed us to sit at the table and discuss these matters with you. They're very important. And thank you. And we salute you for all the hard work you guys have been doing.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Walls. Next up, we have Lisa Rice. I'm gonna unmute you, and in the past, we have given Lisa extra time due to a disability, so. Starting the clock for 3 minutes, Lisa, you should be able to speak now. Please.
You're still muted, Lisa.
I'm trying.
There we go.
Okay. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa Rice, and I wanted to thank all of you for your patience and your grace through this experience. I came to you in August. You were my exit strategy after almost 5 years of trying to just share resources for existing organizations to help people that are in dire need of housing. All I've wanted was for you to say out loud that developmentally disabled and disabled adults in Delaware need housing. I've shared a lot, but here's the application the state can fill out for the waiver to spend Medicaid differently on housing. And I've shared services that work for wraparounds, including the church, because they work, creative arts, agriculture. And I want you to know that when my son was less than 3, I was told that he needed a lifetime waiver to waive his federal right to an institution. I was told by another mom, not from anyone from the state. And then I was told a couple of years later that he would be on that wait list forever. And that was by another mom. And at this time, as I've shared, the federal government has a completely different attitude, in my opinion, about housing the developmentally disabled population. And the resources are there. It's bipartisan. Share your obligation by law. And I told you the first time I met you that I hope that you realize the power that you have. And we shouldn't tell babies that they're never going to have a place to live until their parents are dead. Not in America, not in Delaware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm not seeing any other raised hands at this time, so I will once again ask if you would like to make public comment, please raise your hand now.
Reacts them.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I should have told you that. And I signed them in.
It appears that nobody else wants to give public comment at this time. So we can
Thank you for
switch.
those public comments. Caitlin, are you gonna walk us through the document now?
I sure am. So before we even get into the edits, I just want to explain the layout of this report as it currently exists. And my mouse is not really cooperating very well.
Yeah. Caitlin, can you?
Make it bigger?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Oh, okay. A little too big. I'm just gonna. Okay. All right, so our table of contents, we're gonna put in a letter on behalf of our wonderful co-chairs. So that is something that DSHA staff will add before we give it over to the governor and the General Assembly. We're also working on a glossary of terms so that we can define things like affordable, area median income, et cetera. We also have an introduction section where we talk about the housing needs assessment and housing cost and affordability. And then this is the real meat right here, task force findings and recommendations. This is the quote unquote front of the book and what we are hoping to get folks blessing on before today's meeting. Then we're gonna have acknowledgements and then appendices. So in the appendices, we'll have background information about the enabling legislation, how we selected our subcommittee members, the public participation process, et cetera. Then each subcommittee will have its own appendix section where we will list that subcommittee's specific charge, their membership, a brief statement about how many times they met, and then the full list of approved subcommittee recommendations from those subcommittees. So all 71 subcommittee recommendations will have a home in their subcommittee section. I
Can I
also.
ask a question about that? Is it okay? Is it okay to ask a question?
Please.
So on the subcommittee, are you including the minutes of the subcommittee meetings as well, or just the final recommendations?
I think we're just gonna do the recommendations, like the minutes we already have on our website, so I think we may be able to get away with just linking to the website. Because otherwise the PDF would be like hundreds of pages. Okay. All right, the other thing I want to note for members is when I sent this draft to you a couple days ago, we were still fleshing out our introduction section and housing cost and affordability. I know a couple of you commented on this section, but it is different than what you were commenting on. So, and I know Preston and Amy, you both had raised the question, you know, why are we using 2023 data when there's more recent data available? The reason is we created these tables back in the fall at the request of the subcommittees. That was the most recent data set then. And those data sets were used by our finance team to then estimate maximum loan amounts and purchase prices. So I don't want to switch to 2024 here because this is the information that got us to this. And then Mike, we also wanted to include information about your case study. So I think we don't want to focus on that in today's meeting, but certainly after this meeting is over, if you want to, you know, wordsmith to make sure that we are accurately capturing your case study, that would be great.
There's something I haven't found the answer to yet. I asked it in our subcommittee and I didn't want to answer the question or have people answer it so much. We did. But the question is, whose burden is it to address, you know, for manufactured housing? I'm doing this for all affordable housing. Whose burden is it to address affordable housing in Delaware? Is it the state's? And I asked this question when I gave my presentation, and we have not answered that question yet. Who is responsible for this burden? A lot of people think it's the developers responsible for it. We just have to eat that cost. Some people do, not all. But who are the stakeholders in solving affordable housing? I know we talk about it, but I've never seen a description of it.
I'll take a crack at this one. So the affordable housing crisis is is obviously statewide, nationwide.
Correct.
It will take all of us to help resolve the issue, working in public-private partnerships, working as an individual developer, with state, with local, with private developers. States do not build housing. Developers build housing, but then we need to set the conditions for it. And I think that's why we have this report, because we're trying to help set the conditions for favorable outcomes for affordable housing. And that was the purpose of this whole basically committee, to talk about financing. How does the state get involved? That's in there. There's things in there about the local jurisdiction, how they can help with zoning reform. That's in there. So I think your answer is basically the body of the report.
But can you just state that in the very beginning of the report, that the burden of solving affordable housing is exactly what you just said?
I think, I don't think, if we go through wordsmithing, I think the.
We don't even answer that question.
It could be something in the introduction, you could sort of say.
Well, I guess maybe like we'll map out the situation, because we were talking about the Delaware Housing Needs Assessment. Delaware's housing needs assessment, not, Jerry Heisler's housing needs assessment that he needs to provide. I think we are encompassing it, and we'll figure out how it gets wordsmithed in the introduction. But I think that's what the basis of the report is, and I think it's being settled by that.
Thank you.
Okay. So, task force findings and recommendations. So here we're saying the findings of the task force were informed by the HNA, research conducted by DSHA staff on behalf of the subcommittees. Those are the tables that are in the prior section, as well as insights and discussions among subcommittee members based on their individual areas of subject matter expertise. In total, 5 subcommittees voted to approve 71 recommendations. Collectively, these recs revealed the following. I'm not gonna read all of that to you. So there are no suggested edits to this.
I made one.
Okay.
HNA, I think you always should spell out that certainly at the beginning of a new section.
Oh, the new section, okay.
Housing needs assessment.
Okay. It's spelled out in a further section, but okay, noted.
I suggested under, we haven't gotten there yet, under the types.
All right, then we move on to types of residential development to encourage. So as we get onto this next page, there have been some suggested edits, right? So we've got diverse housing types, including ADUs, micro units. This we are going to define in our glossary. There was a request to define that, so that will be defined. Single room occupancies similarly will be defined in the glossary. Group homes, small lot, single family homes, townhomes, duplexes, and other missing middle housing types. Missing middle will also be defined in the glossary. Manufactured housing, housing designed to be accessible to those with different abilities, in parentheses, universal design. Multifamily units, including higher storied residential buildings, higher density projects, small multifamily units compatible with neighborhood scale, and housing developments in master planned areas that have shovel-ready sites. Are people okay with these suggested track changes? I'm seeing head shaking.
And I'll just point out, like, the absence of seeing a particular type of unit does not mean that's not part of the system. So if you don't see something, or if the public doesn't see something, and that doesn't mean the absence of is like deleting that from the scenario.
Should that first line then be diverse housing types, including but not limited to?
I like that.
Yep.
Including, but not limited to. Okay, so then I'm gonna go ahead and accept these changes.
Not to be nitpicky, but I think we need a comma after the word including.
Gotcha.
Not there, sorry, including but not limited to. Usually when you see the words including comma but not limited to, there's a comma after.
Ah, gotcha, including.
My favorite.
Gotcha.
We're doing so well. Listen, let me just, we'll make sure that the punctuation is. I mean, other than that, it's been pretty. That's the reason I made, let me check the draft watermark off, that helps to allay fears.
Moving on to target populations. We had a couple suggested changes here, swapping development for projects. We all good with that? Thought so, great. And then Karen had brought up a great point, which is specifically the Finance and Development and Construction Subcommittees voted on these AMI thresholds. But the question is, can the task force just vote to say, yes, these are the things we want that way? We don't have to reference the subcommittees and we can say the task force recommends.
Are we? I mean, that's fine. Are we doing that by accepting the whole report?
I guess that's where my question lies, is recommendations have come from a subcommittee, but are we sitting here then signing off? Because I think that's. Are we jumping ahead? I'm not sure what I'm trying to ask here, but I'm not sure that's what we are doing.
Is there a way to add language to the stuff that you said you wanted consensus about at the front? You want everyone to be in consensus about what ends up at the front, right? So is there a way to add language to say all this stuff everyone agreed on, not everyone agreed on all the stuff in the back? Just like to add so that that's known for whoever's reading the report? Is that helpful? Would that help address?
I think so.
Yeah, so my point though was that it needs to clearly say a defined definition of affordable housing, and even though two committees brought it up, I think we as a task force should agree that the definition of affordable housing is 80% below for rental and 126% below.
Or like to say the task force defines affordable housing as.
Yeah, because the implication is by mentioning the committees that the other committees may not have agreed or it hasn't been like.
Correct.
So
Are there any concerns about the task force endorsing those two limits in the definition of affordable housing? Okay, move on.
All right, great. So we'll just say the task force.
And I think we can, I added the are present at the bottom, but as I'm rereading this, I'm not sure it's necessary.
Okay, so I'll take it out then. All right, so now it reads.
The are present words at the.
Oh,
I like to disqualify just because of some economic research I've done. Not that it'll happen. In high inflationary environments, stress level for somebody in 80 and 120 is much different than a non-inflationary environment. Hypothetically, if we get into a high inflationary environment, those limits are not real because their basket of goods is so limited and they get such extreme shocks compared to somebody who's in the 200 or 300%. You just have to be careful doing that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not valid, I'm just saying you have to be careful.
But I think it is important for us to sort of. I think that this was intended to give some guidelines when in the policymaking process.
exactly.
And also, I want to be maybe just clear in the minutes here that this is not restrictive. I mean, that there are, and that was part of the conversation in prior meetings. You know, this doesn't mean that all rental housing programs should have an AMI ceiling of 80%, right? That I mean, we can do some, you know, the tax credit program, for example, there are some rents set at 50 and 60. So this is a general sort of, when we talk about affordable housing, about affordability of housing, and the policymaking process, that these are the upper ranges of what we're, it's more about
And
unifying language. I
And the
think.
state resources will go to those
Sure.
at this point.
So then I'm gonna delete Karen's comment since we've addressed it. Are we happy with this section?
Yes.
Seeing nods, great, all right. Locations to encourage, we're adding state strategies here, any objections? Didn't think so.
I had another part commented on level 3 or other levels. That the problem is, especially in manufactured housing or affordable housing, the cost of ground is so expensive in level 1 or 2 compared to level 3. we could never build a mobile home park in level 1 or 2. We could in level 3. And that what really needs to change is the whole paradigm, that we need to get DNREC and DHP, Department of Public Health, or DPH, to start managing our private water facilities for communities on an active basis. Senator Huxtable's heard me complain about this, and he's complained about it. And we need a program to do that, and then we could be building more affordable housing on less expensive land, which is gonna allow the threshold to work. And I commented further back in the report on that. I don't know if you want to put it here or further back, but it's really important that we have access to more inexpensive land. Our committee hearing, I presented evidence, that academic evidence that showed that mobile home parks are built on inexpensive land, and the higher concentration of them is always on inexpensive land. And that just makes common sense. So for us to be in just level 1 and level 2 restrictiveness.
But it says and level,
But the problem for us is to get counties, Newcastle County will not let you use private septic systems anymore.
I get that. I just want to accept the language right here.
So my concern is, you may give us the okay to do it, but we won't have Newcastle County's wish to do it. And that's the tension. So we need some authority from the state level to allow us to go into level 3s.
So I think that might be an implementation point, not a recommendation.
Yeah.
That might be covered under the zoning reform implementation
I
section.
think so too, yeah.
All right, maybe it is. I didn't see it.
This is a more, we're still in the segment where we're sort of laying out
The ground,
a
we're
little
not-
more philosophical
Right.
wish list as opposed to clear implementation or recommendation, sorry. And I think that your point may be a good one, but I think it may also be something that, you know, you tie back to here and say, to implement this desire of the task force to see investments where infrastructure exists in level 3, the way that we do that is.
All right.
I just have one minor edit on the very first bullet. After it says where infrastructure exists, I would add the words or planned.
Seeing none?
That's fine, makes sense.
Okay, just, I want everybody to take a glance at all of the red right now. Does anybody have any heartburn about any of the suggested changes? Not hearing anything, I'm gonna accept them. So we're adding R within, where infrastructure exists, swapping projects for housing.
Yeah, we asked that if we've approved it, maybe we just move on. I
Okay.
appreciate the drafting in action, but I want to make sure that this is our last meeting.
Yeah.
That part was not supposed to be out loud, sorry.
I will say though, like, it's gonna get crazy if I don't accept them though, like, for my own sanity and clarity, I think we have to.
Well, you can highlight.
But we
Yeah, you can highlight the whole thing and accept them all at once.
Gotcha, yeah, okay, I like that. All right, this is where we start getting into the recommendations. I just wanna note that this paragraph here and all this stuff up here is like preamble, right? So our actual recommendations, we're calling objectives, that's where the recommendation language is. This is the exposition.
So I feel like we're moving into a new section. Can we, why don't we, just sort of for formality purposes, should we take a voice vote on everything that we've done so far?
The findings section.
I think we've done that by affirmation as we've
Okay.
gone along. I don't think we need to do
Nothing
it.
works, okay,
Yeah, as you said, don't get done this evening.
yes.
All right.
And I would say silence is affirmation, just to put that out there.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
That's good, that's good.
So we only have one suggested change for this preamble. I think it's a good one. We're gonna accept it. Great, okay. Moving on. Computer is slow. Okay. Our first, our first objective. So I had, you know, put yellow placeholder language for Amy to fill in, and she did, and I think, Amy. And I know Preston, you had shared some thoughts, and I think Amy tried to take those into consideration. So.
Did you share my thoughts with Amy? I didn't think to send it. We can talk about it, so.
I don't know the best way to go about this. This is a big old paragraph.
It gives folks some time to digest.
Okay.
So before that, even though it's significant subsidies, I suggest that there should be an investment.
We did that already.
Yeah, we did.
Well, right in this sentence, it starts out with significant subsidies.
Yeah, we changed that up there, I'm sorry.
So you want it changed here too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Significant investments?
Well, 139 million is a very specific
Period.
number.
It was when we did the calculation to determine the 100, it also included the 139. It was part of the,
But it's an estimate, right? Or is it?
It says,
well, yeah, I tried to kind of calculate, to say that both numbers are estimates, like they're not like university or, you know.
I don't know that, I guess, I don't know that we need to go into all that detail. My sense of it was, we did this calculation, we were still advocating for 100 million to go to the HDF for a variety of things, not just rental
Oh,
housing.
yeah, I
So-
agree, yeah,
and
and I
that's-
tried to say that the 100 million was based purely on the LIHTC to demonstrate that that wouldn't be enough if we wanted to do you know, other types of activities.
Your 100 million was just to tackle the LIHTC program. If we want to do other things, it may cost more.
Yeah, I mean, and we could take out the 139 million and say, you know, the amount of public funding with leverage, you know, would be leveraged by at least 100% of the investment.
Yeah, I like being more general like that, but I think it's an important point. I don't want to leave it out because I want a legislator to look at it and say, so we're doing all this, no one else is, you know, helping out here. And then they need to see that, hey, you do 100 million here, you're gonna get, depending on what type of project it is, I mean, either 100 million to up to 400 million
Yeah,
annually of other investment, whether it be private investment, you know, other grants, other type of funding. So
It's tied to the 20,000 units that were short.
yes.
Yeah.
And it also is tied to the fact, the amount of demolition that will occur in units. Because I've been trying to find the amount of units that we demolish for affordable units every year. I can't find that data.
I think it's not, because I think somewhere either in here, or
So-
something we read, it
And
said,
that doesn't.
this assumes we continue to maintain the existing stock of affordable housing.
Right, and but it also doesn't have a sense of future demographic for it either.
Yeah, Jerry, I think we're past that. Let's just stick with
All right,
20,000 units and go.
all right.
Yeah, and even 100 million,
I think
it's
that's the
20,000.
initial peg point.
Yeah, like that's the low end.
Right, so it has to be
Right.
not
We
adjusted
didn't
for
want it to be-
inflation. I think there should be a footnote that says not adjusted for inflation, not adjusted for XYZ, so everybody knows it's not a minimum, right?
Yeah, and I think that the top statement, if you go above the fold to the prior statement, it does very specifically say without considering the monetary or maybe changing the monetary support to the investment necessary to produce affordable units for homeownership or units for special populations.
Jerry, we talking capital.
I'm just talking capital,
Right.
just for multifamily.
Should we just keep it to capital and the absence of, make sure, you know, there's obviously funds needed for support services?
Yes.
Because we're just talking capital and
Okay.
affordable housing production.
Okay, so give me the line edits.
I like what that sentence says. I mean.
Yeah, I think it does.
Yeah.
It says for affordable housing production.
The only thing is, if I read the 139 million, if I was a legislator, I'd say, that's a very specific number. Please show me the calculation or the math you did. And if you have it, you're like, here it is.
Yeah, I meant the very first sentence before you get to the estimate. I don't even know that, again, I don't know that we need to say all that. If we just say without considering, you know, just.
Yeah, so if you want to take out the 9 and 4%.
No, I think, well, that's better. That's,
There you go.
I mean, for affordable housing production, that's what that's what the calculation was, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you're looking at what it would take for affordable housing production to meet production needs assessed over a 30-year period. It's $100 million with 9 million annually leveraged. Would you like that? Do you think that, I mean, you have the math to back up, I mean, you're using some sort of public-private investment ratio, right?
Yeah.
From standard, looking back at past LIHTC deals.
Yeah, we average the cost of a unit.
For whatever it's worth, I mean, none of this is gonna happen with LIHTC because that's a
No.
limited source. So even if we got $100 million a year, it wouldn't all be done through LIHTC because it was on LIHTC. So it's
And it's gonna take time to even ramp up the.
so I think that is a calculated number that could be backed up.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do a footnote for the calculation. Dave had a good point there. My only concern about the calculation is that, it was our committee, it was the members of our committee doing it, right? So I wouldn't want anybody to kind of get skewered by somebody who's an economist being like, oh, yeah, well, you should have done this and this. And that's why we tried to couch at some point here that, at the end that, a more thorough and analysis would be necessary if you wanted to, but.
Million, should
Yeah,
Metro,
like, I just feel like you start to lose, like, we get into specifics, like, assuming we did it all in LIHTC, which we wouldn't do, but, just to say if we did. I just feel like it's not for this introductory kind of like, you start to lose legislators and their eyes glaze over when they start to see
Okay,
this level of detail.
yeah, and I.
Not his.
Sites like, Hitam, would be, I think, the most impactful because I want to take out like, well, the state's investment needs to be at X, like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
$1
So
billion.
maybe take out the-
Personally, I just want the one sentence that says, this amount of investment will be leveraged. Is estimated to be leveraged by private investment greater than, or, equal to 150% or 140%, which is what that is. You need to say something that other dollars are coming in,
Yeah.
but say it in the simplest form possible.
Well, I would say, what's the gross that can be built out of that in the number of units on average? If you have $130 million, $39 million, and you're averaging, leveraging debt against it, you get $300 million, $400 million.
Yeah, I mean, but that's
So that's equal
market.
how many units?
That's market rate guys, like,
Yeah.
they were looking at LIHTC people that do nonprofit stuff and it's different. It's like, in my projects, and I send it to them, it's like. It's
Leverage is much
it's like
higher.
500 million of other money to 100 million of state money. But in a LIHTC project, it's 100 million of state money to 140 million of other money.
So how many units does that yield?
My question is, what am I cutting? Am I cutting anything?
So I think we're gonna cut out the sentence that says the estimate takes into consideration.
Okay,
We're gonna cut that out.
gone.
And then in the next sentence, the subcommittee estimates the amount of public funding will leverage an additional private capital by at least a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, so that's something we can honestly say.
A 1-to-1 ratio.
You're showing my age here on this. There was a
Yeah.
study by the Delaware
That's good.
Housing Coalition in 1998, 1999.
Yeah, love that.
That said that any investment in affordable housing had a return of 7-to-1. So, I mean,
But that's very broad.
Yeah, that's probably total economic value. now.
Yeah.
was that
like-
total economic? Okay.
Yes.
Like
So,
job.
Again, I
job.
thought it was 1998.
Good memory though, well done.
Yes. I use it
Okay,
all
so
the time.
then, I'm bringing us back. The sentence now reads, the subcommittee estimated that this amount of public funding would leverage additional private capital by at least a 1-to-1 ratio in the form of investments, loans, and grants. Do we like the sentence?
Yeah.
Do we need any of the sentences that are after it?
No.
Any objections to me hacking off this section?
Whole section.
you're gonna lose the legislators. Well, give them what they need.
Oh, I thought you were making fun of me.
No,
You were
I
agreeing.
wasn't always
I
a
agree.
legislator, trust, I
Yeah,
understand.
the wonky stuff can go in the back.
Yeah,
That's too much detail for this.
give them what we need done now.
Boom, okay.
Oh, my.
So I'm gonna accept all of the changes in the highlighted, since we've discussed it. If I can figure out,
I think you should bold 100 million.
Well, there's heating
So if there's
campaign.
jobs and drop enough, you want them to drop a little.
There's
further?
there's
Well, the campaign can now be 1% or greater.
okay, yeah, I'm also taking off the yellow.
1% sounds reasonable. It's like
Okay.
1%.
Yeah.
The next stuff that we have in red was suggested additions by Jerry. So,
This is sort of, we believe that you need to have a transition. You need transition money through vouchers for affordable housing because you're not gonna build it all quickly. So how do you raise that money? And then how do you raise 100 million? What was proposed was using property assessments through the whole state, including nonprofits, because they have a stake in this as well. We raised $300 million. 100 million would be dedicated, obviously. I wasn't in the other group, but it's I that spoke 100 million. And then the other 200 million would be left for wraparound services and vouchers. Wraparound services are really critical.
Okay, and so just to be clear, these will appear as recommendations in the manufactured housing subcommittee report in the back. I just want to make sure that part is clear. So I think
yes,
so the task force, I think ought to look and see whether this is appropriate for the front of the book.
Yeah, we.
also,
Oh, I just wanted to add that, under the additional considerations section on page 10, there is a section for supports for short-term affordability needs, and I think there's an opportunity there to talk about, and I had even placed an edit in there, utilization of a lower dollar voucher program that
Right.
supports cost per incident. So I think that there could be a role for this there.
That's fine.
Yeah, my personal opinion is this is the type of specifics that should not be in the Sneakin document. It should be in the overall document, but this is pretty specific stuff.
I was just gonna ask Jerry, why are these bullets above the other ones, right? Like, did you mean for this to live under this?
Could be, I wasn't. I was
Okay.
not being that specific.
Gotcha. All right, so is the feeling of the group that we're gonna delete these lines from this section here? I'm seeing head shaking.
You wanna move it?
So where
Okay.
the
First, I'm gonna move it down
additional consideration, I know that and where we discussed it.
and we're moving it down to additional.
Under other considerations and maybe discussed at that point.
Just like page 10, that was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. All right, I'm just gonna park it here for the. Rolling. I'm just thinking, all right, so it's moved, it didn't go away, it's moved. All right. Now. Back to this, okay, so now we have our preamble that we like. Here's where we talk about what we're actually recommending vis-a-vis funding. There were suggestions from two folks to actually take rental out of here because they want the $100 million to be broader than just rental housing, but also like home ownership. And not just for large developers, but also like small developers. Are we okay with taking rental out?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay, this stuff in red here, you had added Amy, I think it's just, expanding on the idea of the bond financing stuff, so. I'll give folks a second to read this language. And folks, let me know when you're ready for me to scroll, because there's another sub bullet. Scroll. Okay, and then this sub bullet includes changes from both Amy and Preston. I tried to marry the two. And then finally, this one was from Jerry. Do we like all of them?
I think we ought to remove the manufactured housing recommendation citation
Yeah.
because we aren't citing where these come from, and a lot of them come from multiple different subcommittee recommendations.
Yeah, that's just a comment.
Any other questions or comments?
Okay, so we're all happy. Also, I can delete the comment from here. We addressed it. We are happy then with accepting everything in the red as it currently appears. Knowing that I'll go back and clean up all the semicolons and stuff like that.
And do we need to put tips in here?
What do you mean?
TIFs are a type of
Oh,
like,
TIFs.
so by the way, I do know now the difference between a special tax district and a TIF.
Okay.
Special tax district is a new introduced tax for just that development that's paid off by just that development. A TIF is spending money predicated upon the additional taxes
Yeah.
that would come in from an ordinary tax rate on a new development.
Yeah.
We don't use a lot of TIFs, at least.
Should we, actually, if we're encouraging, like, should we not just put that as another tool to allow us? Because there could be some places that could.
Could use it.
I mean,
If we were just.
Can you go back up just a second?
Don't you need the school district to agree to it? And that's the problem.
Financing.
I think you do. For TIF.
Okay, so
I've never used one.
Down?
further up,
Oh, sorry.
because that's bond financing. Public-private investment. Telemetry, okay, no, scroll down, so it would be a new sort of tax bullet.
He's saying with.
So it's in the next one, on the
Section.
first one, on the next page. We started listing,
So,
allow, encourage use of bond financing, including these general obligation bonds, special tax districts.
And tax incremental
Tax
financing.
incremental financing.
Just so
We can say
people
it.
know it's a tool.
and
that
tax
they could buy.
Incremental.
financing, do I need to put TIF in
Increment financing.
parentheses or?
No, because you didn't put SPDs.
Anyone?
People avoid the.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a comment on this section?
Increment financing.
Oh, increment?
Yes.
Tax increment financing, okay,
Even though we never.
okay. All right,
But we could.
That's so
I-
technology.
I think we just got through our first objective. Yeah, okay, I'm bringing us back.
I said we should not be clapping, it's 11:30.
Got you. Okay, a couple notes about.
I just wanna make sure, like, there's a level of wordsmithing I think we're getting into, that we just,
Yeah.
there's gonna be some additional editing, but the purpose and the content, like, I think it needs to be there. And like, we'll let Caitlin do the, like, detailed wordsmithing and little
And
comments.
she assured me that it'll come back out and we can still review it
Yes.
again, and then we can still say.
What I don't think we will,
Something
I-
minor.
but what I don't,
No?
what I don't think we can do is add something like.
No, sorry,
Tax
totally,
increment
I
financing,
agree,
right?
something totally different, I agree.
Right, so let's make sure that we're clear that we hope to leave today.
No, you're
Today.
right, you're right. That
Uh,
would be
With,
preferred,
with the content,
yes.
commas, listing, things like that, yes, we can change, but, and wordsmithing perhaps, but we're not going to feel empowered to change the recommendations.
No, absolutely not, I agree.
All right, I'm gonna preface this by saying, I had put some placeholder language in the draft that I sent to everybody, and I wanted some more context to set the stage for what we're recommending around zoning. David, you had suggested this language. Preston, you had also shared this language. I think they get at the same thing.
They do, we don't need both. We need one
Okay.
or the other.
All right,
Or do we need something that's a little bit more shorter and concise?
all right.
I'm shorter.
Shorter and concise.
I rate it, I'm sure it's good.
Oh, got it. Okay, so,
Maybe shorter.
Right.
so we're,
More concise.
so we're accepting Preston's.
Let me read it first. Can we,
Yeah, could
Yeah,
we
thank you.
actually zoom out one notch so we can see what I'm on the screen?
Yeah. If I can get.
Number reaction, everybody.
Just bring it down.
Very risk emergencies, bro.
Yeah.
Just the projects.
Okay.
Can I make a recommendation, please? This is not my area of expertise. And so with that, when I see all this and we get 5 of these a week at this level of detail, it's impossible. So what I would suggest is pick your poison, and that poison has to be detailed, and the detail has to be facts, and the facts have to be bulleted. But all this word stuff is first of all, it frustrates because we see 5 of these a week, just like this. And if we want to make decisions based on all this and the level of detail that you want to have in there, I would say it's got to be indexed or placed someplace else. But tell me what I need to know. Tell me how I can get more information, and let's move on. When I see 16 pages in a report, I go, holy crap, how am I going to get through this? Because I only have 4 more to do today. So I would just, hopefully that is some guidance from a person who's not an expert. If this was, science and this was medicine, then I would be all over this and want more detail. Yes, please tell me. But you have to understand your audience, and the audience is mostly people who this is not their area of expertise. And so just please bullet it, get the main facts done, and then put the rest in the back of the book where you can say, okay, I need more information on this, so let me figure this out, please.
So I could that be accomplished with a summary, an executive summary at the very front that in 1 page highlights the categories of recommendations, so that you can pick it up and say, okay, we have to address housing types and zoning, and these are the objective titles. Bring those even further up to the introduction or the letter, perhaps with a co-chair's word.
In my opinion, the answer is yes, and then seek for details, because now what's going to happen with this is legislation is going to be
Yes.
made, and so then this report, although valuable, is going to be less, because now we have to look at the legislation of what each piece of legislation looks like. And how that goes to the goals and objectives of the task force. If that's a 2-pager or a 3-pager, fine, but a 15-pager. What number of bills are we on now? We're already in the hundreds, right? So we're just starting.
I thought you brought some.
But I think that let's focus on the goal. The goal is to get the message across that affordable housing is important, how we're going to do this, how we're going to fund it, and what we're going to do, how we're going to interface with the counties and the builders and that everything together, boom, boom, boom.
And I think one thing that's important, these objectives are sort of categories. So if you're interested in the zoning component, right, there's an objective sort of on that. That portion is, I think we've done a
And that may
pretty good
go
job of
through to the legislation, because the legislation is going to be on specific topics, and we can pull that out.
Yeah.
But
So
I think that we're gonna, it's gonna be death by 2 many words here. Just saying.
No, I appreciate that.
So
I'm just wondering how.
Condense these paragraphs to 1 sentence. That just says that local zoning ordinances in large part encourage sprawl and limit the ability for affordable housing. Done.
You want to do that? I'm fine.
Give me one more time, Mike.
Local zoning ordinances in large part encourage sprawl and limit the ability to provide affordable housing.
But over it, you were the PT. Yes. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. Can we go back up just a little bit?
Discriminate is a better word.
A little bit more. Keep going on.
Whatever word everybody wants.
It's the first sentence says, and there was broad consensus. Don't we have unanimous consensus that changes are needed at the local level?
I was
Yeah,
trying to be conservative and cover my own butt. Unanimous? Unanimous, all right, unanimous, there was,
The statistics on why. Generalization, but it's.
all right, I'm gonna try to bring us back, I had said here that there was broad consensus that changes are needed. I'm being told we want to say unanimous. Any heartburn with that? Speak now for the whole piece.
Nope.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is thank you for this language, David, but it's getting
Go away.
cut.
Preston, you're gone too.
Thank you, Preston. Getting cut.
Great, I like yours better.
It's actually, we're seeking and limit, I would put like we could write down, I would put discriminate against.
I wouldn't put discriminate, 'cause I'm not, discriminate suggests that it's a willful intention,
It is.
Yeah.
and I don't know that it
No,
is.
sometimes it's not.
Are we okay with this red addition here? Enable more diverse housing types,
Yes.
smaller units, great, it's
Correct.
getting in. All right, that was the preamble. So I'm gonna move on to this stuff. Okay, so what I tried to do is refine the ideas from our zoning slide last time,
I'm gonna listen to it.
but
Legislative.
okay, so Mike and David had come up with some specifics around densities and bulk standards. That's what I put in here.
Are we done that section?
Rather than
So
the
give us-
general stuff.
Give us a minute
Sure, to read.
or drown me. Can I?
Well.
I think the incentives are put below.
Hello, okay, so
So-
I'm just gonna take out this yellow.
Certainly, let's not say it twice.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's,
Then we have them, such as qualifying.
so then
This
go,
was placeholder language that I wrote, but I struck it out in order to put in the more specific stuff that Mike and David have sent to the whole task force over the past week.
so.
That's first three are the where we landed on the level 1, 2, or 3, or with
Yes.
sewer thing. So. The next things are the minimum numbers.
So that's
Mike started.
here.
What about counting?
And then I think this last one,
That's greater than, okay, so there's.
We're all greater
somewhere. Okay.
Yeah.
Just a quick question, and I'm sorry, I was asking, are some of these recommendations still the ones that are in the back of the book?
There.
I don't-
no,
They are
so,
not.
Okay.
so the specifics right here are not in the back of the book. This was a request that came out of like the February full task force meeting.
Okay.
Correct.
I kind of like this because if I'm a legislator,
Mhm.
I hate reading like high level, you know, in theory stuff. I always want to get down to like, well, what specifically, what do you want me to do?
Yep.
And this answers that question.
And it's bullet.
So,
And it's bullets, that's right.
yeah.
There you go, Mike.
That was a request that the subcommittee
Right.
came back with additional detail. So my thought is, would that just go back to the subcommittee's detail?
Yeah, so we did not vote on this as a subcommittee. This came after our subcommittee recommendations were out. Mike got it started, and I think I embellished a couple. I really agree. These are some numbers that make sense from a planning and land development standpoint, but it is not a subcommittee recommendation.
Correct, and that was because so the subcommittee recommendation came to the full task force, and it was the request of the full task force to provide specifics.
That being said, we could have come up with something like this, and we might have told the very same thing had we met at the task force. I think we're here as a task force, if these numbers are okay. I mean, I think they're, having worked on many comprehensive plans and zoning ordinances, I think they are standard types of things.
I think 24 units is a little non-standard.
And what does that one say again? 24
Not
units
less
per,
than 24 units.
per acre for any zoning
It's
district.
zoned
which-
multifamily. Well, that's the problem. Our standard in Delaware is inadequate.
So I was assuming this, I mean, again, where did you come up with that, Mike? I mean, I was thinking that might be some standard for if you're doing a garden apartment type of a complex.
I mean, even I'm
You
just
know,
thinking
that's-
of our
That's
projects.
possible.
I have one drawn right now that's 24 units.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible.
Well, I'm using tiny homes, it's very possible. That's
Yeah.
what my Lucia Village is, and it's.
You can do 30 units per acre in a townhouse type of a.
That's all I'm like,
You know, it's
but
possible.
not less than, if it said up to, I'd be okay, like, but.
It's gotta say not less than, because you have jurisdictions that are doing 8. You
And
can't
that
do
should also
less
say
than
net
8
on, it
units.
should say net on it as well,
But
rather than gross.
the way I read that, it's, you know, the zoning may be, 24 units per acre, the project may be 15 units per acre, it doesn't preclude that project.
It's a
But
thing.
it allows,
It's setting the minimum allowable density.
Okay, so so if I design something and the most I can get in an attractive format is 19.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm good.
yeah,
Well, because right now you're capped at.
I see what you're saying.
Capped at 8.
That's the max density. Okay, that's fine.
Correct.
Okay.
Max, not less.
Encouraging the towns, right.
Are there any other comments or concerns about this section?
I just want to note, like at the bottom, this is where we had put, we further recommend creating a pilot program to provide technical assistance to facilitate implementation of the minimum requirements to encourage production of affordable housing. That's how we end this ginormous recommendation. Are we okay with accepting the
Dave and the engineer on the same page.
it says.
Should be.
Do I have to go ahead to accept?
Yes.
Would you like to take a picture and celebrate that moment?
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and accept.
Yes.
It's a slightly different question. There isn't anything in that section about timing.
You're talking about on the.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be number 6, sorry.
That gets really.
Does, is that something that is relevant to this?
I mean, when to implement
So
things.
by right, so the intent of that recommendation, as I think I understand it, is to eliminate the discretionary approval processes that tend to follow a lot of affordable housing, multifamily housing projects. It's not an expedited review issue, it's a certainty issue, right?
I was talking more
Are you
about sort of
talking
a
like
sense of urgency.
How
as you
long
say,
should it be till the local governments do this?
Oh, I
Like-
misunderstood your question, sorry.
Just a
Sense
next
of
week
urgency,
thing, a
not a
next year
process.
thing, a 2-year?
And so I'm putting it to the task force, like, is there, do we want to just leave these recommendations and I don't know, maybe there's a part at the front of the book.
If this were to be a legislative type of thing, maybe that's something for the legislative process to suss out, like how long do local governments need. to
Yeah, I'm not
accomplish
sure,
this.
if I were a legislator, I'd be kind of annoyed if we told them, and you need to do this within the next 3 months.
Yeah,
Like, I'd be like, you have no idea how this process works then.
yeah, there's,
Okay.
there's
Okay.
probably a conversation that needs to happen if this becomes a
Okay.
thing.
I think, I'll
But
just
are
share.
we trying to tell the legislature that when we'd like it?
No,
I don't,
Not everyone
I don't think we can do that in this document. I think if there's a piece of legislation that ends up being developed as a result of this document, that legislation would outline those things, which would be the carrots and sticks piece that would happen. But I don't think we can do that inside this document. I think that.
Okay.
I think this would be to lobby up at Lake Hall after
Yes.
this document's published to say, and to assist and to encourage them
Right,
to
and help.
keep the process rolling.
Okay.
I'll just share too, that I've been working with a group in the city of Newark about affordable housing. And they delayed any of their recommendations to wait to see what we recommended.
see,
And so I think that
things
not all municipalities are thinking this way, but it's good to hear that they want to have options, they want to see things that then they're going to carry forth to their body.
exactly.
So we're done with objective 2, we're not clapping, we're moving on. All right, first comment here, question from Amy, when we're talking about, developing maximum timelines for approvals, is this for all housing or just affordable?
Just for,
Just affordable, okay,
I'd love it to be for all, but I think that's beyond the scope of this.
okay, so define
So at the top.
of affordable housing projects, or should it be up here?
I would hear in that first sentence.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, for affordable housing development, all right, so then we don't.
Is there
Caitlin,
objection to all housing developments?
Like task forces. Affordable.
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say, Caitlin, if residential at the top gets changed to affordable, you can delete my comments. we don't even have to talk about them.
Okay, cool. So are we all okay with making this specific to affordable housing?
One thing I will add, yeah, delete mine. We don't have to spend time on them if that changes, but I will just add that I think it's important that because my concern with some of this was making sure it was targeted to incentivize the type of housing we want. Right, if we're expediting processes or making things smoother, that we're targeting, especially because the land use changes haven't happened yet, right? If the land use changes had happened, I think you could say all, but because they haven't, I was worried that it would incentivize things that we're specifically saying we don't need. But I think there is also, it also is true that if you do this for all housing, that is better. Then, right, so like, I think it's a balance, like, I think it doesn't always have to be affordable, like, we just need to be able to build more housing too, so I just wanted to say that, but I like that it's changed to affordable here.
Okay. There was a note from, I think Karen, just asking for a little more explanation of like what pay for review means.
I don't think it's fine.
It's fine,
Yeah,
cool,
I
great.
mean, obviously.
I was just gonna suggest a
Explain it.
footnote, but cool, all right,
Back in the book.
delete.
Yeah,
It's actually in
It's
the.
really third-party review is what that means, but that's.
Yeah, maybe in your
Our-
definition.
It's really a third-party review is what that
Our
is.
subcommittee recommendations actually have more
It's
details.
not, the paper review is like, well, paper.
Okay, next comment. So Amy had noted, about the word criteria here. I'd feel more comfortable if we stated how this criteria would be defined or who would define it.
I think we defined it earlier.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
Well,
80 and 120.
my concern is not about the 80 and 120, but more about, in our subcommittee, particularly as we're thinking about mixed use projects. It doesn't have to be 100% affordable, like if there is some.
Right, and we talked about that as well and decided not to like put a number
Okay.
to it, but that if there's gonna be a special program that expedites, streamlines permits,
Yeah.
you would have to have criteria written in there that says, but must be at least 10%
Okay,
affordable units to qualify for this special program.
okay.
Uh,
Yeah, my,
that are between 80 and 120 or less,
Okay.
you know, so.
yeah, my just concern is that
You don't know
you
what
have
that
a
criteria-
municipality who says, well, it's gotta be 100%, and then that's our
Not
affordability
really.
criteria, and that doesn't necessarily get us where we need to go.
So good to delete the comment?
Could we potentially add, like, that meets affordability criteria that, allows, but that also allows for mixed.
Can't you just say waiving fees for projects where a portion of the project meets affordability criteria without specifying the exact?
Yeah, that
There you
would
go.
make me more comfortable, yeah.
For projects where a portion of
Granted,
the,
most of the time I've asked for a waiver of fees, I say to the municipality, don't worry, I'm only asking for the waiver on the affordable units themselves.
You say that.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't object if they said, well, we're willing to give it to you on all your units, but generally don't ask for that.
Yeah, and that applies for the criteria above too for expediting review that meets affordability.
okay, so we've added third party here. We've added waiving fees for projects where a portion of the units meet affordability criteria. We're happy with those, right? Cool. This here was a suggested addition by Jerry. Jerry, do you want to speak to that?
I already did.
Okay, I'll let folks read it.
I just, Jerry, I think I understand what you're asking for, but I just want to voice that we don't. I mean, Kim Cole is from Denrec. But you know, the whole Denrec, we don't have anybody else from Denrec that's been a part of this, and we can say that, but I don't know if Denrec has that capability or.
If not, they should, or
it's really kind of asking to do a program that maybe they have, maybe they don't. I don't know if Kim can speak to it. I don't know.
Yeah. No, thank you for bringing up, David. So that was one of my questions I was going to bring up, is that doesn't fall under my purview, which is more the energy side of things. And so I wanted to know, was this one of the recommendations that is in the end, that would be in the end, or is this something new language-wise?
this is a recommendation that we approve, but part of the problem is we've been having manufactured housing communities, we've had some problems with septic systems, and Denrec is not monitoring them or taking an active role in it, so we want to get that to happen, but also inexpensive land lies in the rural areas, and the only way we can build manufactured housing communities is to get to that capability of having a monitoring process.
So it's basically a monitoring role that maybe they do, maybe they don't. You're saying they don't do it now, or?
It's not done now at all.
Not done now at
And
all.
we have failures out there, we have failures in water systems, and no one wants to take responsibility for it. So if we have somebody responsible for it, we can all of a sudden.
Are you asking for Denrec to take over those failing systems and fix them and?
No, not at all. There's money out there to have that done. The rural
Okay.
programs can do that. The problem is, everybody's looking the other way. Nobody wants to take responsibility for them, yet Denrec's approved them, and it's contaminating the aquifer, upper aquifer.
Is
So-
this just for existing projects that haven't? been
No,
already
this
made?
is for new, the idea for new
We're kind of
projects.
contradicting almost everything else in the write-up. We always say level 1, 2, and 3 where infrastructure exists. And then someone can read this and say, well, this implies that you can go out in the middle of level 4 and Denrec can set up a monitoring system to see, and you can develop affordable housing there. So like, we're kind of contradicting.
The problem is in Newcastle County now, Preston, I cannot use a septic system anywhere for communities. It's not allowed. The net result is I can never build another mobile home park theoretically in the level 3 areas of Newcastle County. And that's the only place I'm gonna find
So you're,
inexpensive enough land.
so you're not necessarily saying level 4, you're saying at level 3, where we have said we want development, we couldn't do it
Right.
anyway, is what you're
So,
saying.
Right.
so correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, in your growth zone in level 3, would your regulations allow a community septic system? They would not. In Newcastle County, the same is probably true. Being Sussex County, it's different because they have a different sewer tier set up. So in their level 3 areas, they would allow a community septic system,
Correct.
certain criteria and certain tiers. And it's a whole different thing. So this really would only apply in Sussex County.
Or Newcastle County.
So
But you say they don't allow the septic systems.
it appears as though,
Because nobody's monitoring them, which is one of the problems.
I'm not sure that the task force has agreement on this. I would recommend that we take it out for now.
Agreed.
Great. It still lives within your other recommendations then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, we just can't build more mobile home parks. That's the, the goal is to expand housing. That they do it.
So I
We
also
have
would
not
like
been
to
able to
just
vet that.
highlight.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'd also just like highlight that Governor Meyer also has Executive Order 4 that has folks specifically working on streamlining of permitting processes as well. And so that is also, I think we talked about this at the last task force meeting, where some of that work will also, some of this work in this topic area is also continuing.
Okay. So I think we're done with objective 3.
Yes.
Great. There were no comments on objective 4.
Okay.
Now.
There's still 13 more.
And so objective 5 is about strengthening comp plans. We only have a few very, very minor suggested edits. All right, I'm gonna accept these. Boom. Number 6. Okay, provide incentives to developers. We have, so this stuff that's in purple comes from Jerry, and then
The one before was that housing needs assessment, not like comprehensive. Do you want to say that? Sorry, that was added.
it was, I can't remember who added
That was
it.
added, I added it because the conversation at our subcommittee meeting was comprehensive plans tend to be very general about, we got future land use for residential, but they don't look at the need for affordable housing. We're getting the specific of, do we have enough land available to meet that need that's identified in the housing needs assessment? So that's like another level of detail that they don't do yet, that they could do in the future. They should do in the future. That's all our.
All right, so now we're on number 6, and I forgot, there was a question from Karen about, let's see, does the site readiness fund address DelDOT's requirements for road improvements? I don't know the answer. I was hoping somebody here would.
No.
No.
Site readiness fund is outside DelDOT right away. The transportation or TIF fund is inside DelDOT right away.
Transportation Infrastructure Investment Funds.
Correct.
Two similar but different programs.
Okay, so we answered the question.
That second bullet point, I know what you're trying to say, but I think you should write for homes priced to be affordable to households making less than
Yes,
80% of
yeah.
income.
For homes supposed to be affordable.
To households making.
So I'm pretty sure the,
Of less than 80%. Well, I guess you can say.
So again, that's different than what we said, affordable for 120 and below. What's the point on this?
I'm not trying to change what the road, just say, you can't really say.
Yeah.
What it,
120?
It just says we waive reduction waiver.
I think this bullet could be just simplified into fee reduction waivers. You know, as it was.
affordable
So it was. but that's
Yeah.
affordable
And then we
housing
don't need to identify all, because some of them were actually,
Yeah, it's why.
BSA,
We have it above in the.
affordable housing is exempt.
I agree, we've already defined what affordable.
Yeah.
And we've actually worked in the last general assembly for transfer taxes, things of that nature, so couldn't think.
So we're taking it back to this.
We just need to identify that we need fee reduction waivers, period.
Yes.
And that's, you know, and we know this is referring to affordable housing.
Great. Sorry, you guys can't see, but I have all these like things on my screen that I need to move. Okay. Traffic impact studies. This was an addition by Jerry.
That's so. Jerry, in that particular case, how do you determine the traffic improvements that need to take place to accommodate the development's traffic?
It would, just be the entrance. There wouldn't be any offsite improvements.
I mean, I'm not trying to disagree, but sometimes you're creating an unsafe situation, and it's either the TOA or the TIS that tells you that and shows you that.
The problem is with Newcastle, I'm going by Newcastle County now, they're using it as the ability for us to do, to find three acceptable intersections north of the canal on infills is virtually impossible.
My rebuttal to that would be, I don't need DelDOT to tell me to do a TOA for me to design a safe entrance. I don't need that. I can design it safely and do the work that I need to do as a professional engineer to design a safe entrance. I don't need DelDOT to require a TOA to do it.
What's a TOA?
It's like GIS light.
Okay.
And obligated to.
It seems to me that Karen's added bullet, like, kind of overlaps with Jerry's. Do we need
It's
both?
separate. I mean, I think a developer, there's no reason why you don't do it. I mean, you would do a traffic needs assessment just to understand what's going on, right? I mean, it's sort of, well,
It varies.
it varies, right? But then my point was sort of along the lines of DelDOT that requires us to do these improvements to the road when you put in a new, we're facing it with a number of developments, and then the state pays for it anyway, or there's some other combined funding that's paying for that improvement. So why shouldn't DelDOT just pay for it? Especially if they're already planning to improve that road, or, I don't know what the wording is exactly, but you know what I'm saying, is that.
To be similar to site readiness fund?
Yeah, I mean, I think where we're talking ourselves into is that TIF fund, Transportation Infrastructure Investment Fund, is to pay for those road improvements that are necessary, because every development is gonna have an impact on the roadway system.
Right.
And how big it is, there could be impacts just at the entrance or other places, and for the safety of the traveling public. We have to know what those are, they have to be addressed in some way, be it, and I think the TIIF idea is just what you wrote there, Karen, which is if it's an affordable housing development, they should be able to take advantage of that, to have those improvements paid for or subsidized in some way.
Totally agree.
So that it doesn't come off of the pro forma for
That's the
the.
reason why it's unaffordable, because you're putting all
You need
these.
to say, all you need to say is affordable housing projects, if you want to insert criteria, you can. should be eligible to apply for TIF funding. I think that's all you.
That's good.
Yeah,
All right, that's.
those words, I think.
Okay, so.
Concise.
So I just added, yeah, site readiness.
And we already
yeah.
have affordable up here, so I'm gonna take it out here and just say residential because we already know we need affordable. So allow residential projects
Those two
to
things are changes. That was
take-
Advantage of the transportation infrastructure improvement, investment.
I think it's investment.
It's
fund.
TIIF, I know that.
Yes,
investment fund.
correct.
Enough to make sure.
Yeah.
And then just take out what I said. I mean, my point is that I really loved when Mike gave that presentation to Sussex County. The last developer shouldn't have to pay for all the road improvements. We know the few,
And
the ones
there's-
before it paid for it,
And,
so.
and there's also other things like EIDs that do basically the same thing, only differently. You know,
Well, and
there's
to
multiple
Jerry's
mechanisms
point,
to-
like, I like where Jerry's going with that. Meaning incentivizing a faster process for projects that are affordable housing, but I think
It's investment fund.
I think it needs to focus more on where. So if we're saying we want housing to be in municipal and urban areas, like levels 1 and 2. Like that's probably where do we need to be doing a traffic study in downtown Dover if we build a multifamily complex? No, we do not.
No, you're not. That's
So I think it needs to just be twisted to say, eliminate traffic studies in maybe levels 1 and 2. Or something like that, meaning where, not necessarily because it has an affordable housing component.
Yeah, but,
If it's affordable.
You know what I'm saying? Cause it's.
but I think we're not making changes to legislation related to housing in general here. So I think,
Maybe you say affordable housing projects located in
yeah,
maybe
But I
level
think
1 or 2 or
because
something.
there's affordable housing at the top.
I'm just thinking of the way that I would have used this. I would do a 5
No, no,
minute accelerator in level 3.
The problem is if you're going to an infill approach, if you're trying to do infill, it's harder to do infill to make it work. That's the focus of that. I'm not looking for level 3 type eliminations. It's really for level
Yeah.
1 and 2.
So you're okay with level 1 and 2?
I am.
Yeah, then that solves the problem, because there is no such thing as level 2 that's not in an area that's already developed.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of wordsmithing, what am I doing now? Am I striking?
Striking so traffic studies, I would just say traffic impact studies. Can be waived for affordable housing projects within levels 1 and 2.
So
Is that
waive
right?
traffic impact studies.
We had TIF in there, up there, so.
For residential projects, because again, we already put affordable at the top.
Levels 1 and 2.
Located in investment. Levels
Level
1,
3 is where you may need a
and
traffic impact
2.
study.
Then we're getting rid of these words. Does that make everybody happy?
Yep.
So-
Well done.
Aside from that conversation, on this particular objective, this is where I kind of paused and looked at all of them in like a holistic approach, because these incentives are, I'm not sure how to say this. Could you say this is all focused around larger developers that could really afford these projects? Or have the resources for these projects? So is there enough incentives in what we're talking about here for even your single, like 1 unit, 2 unit type situations?
No, but when we're trying to do production. Even like I got a project in Glasgow, it's 15 units. And I'm gonna have to do a traffic study on that.
Even let's say someone gets a property, let's say they inherit property. And maybe they want to turn into a rental unit. Is there enough incentive here? Or do we care in this conversation?
So,
to go
so
that
if,
rental?
the way I think about it is we have that whole objective about the funding and the programs and the subsidy and those things. So maybe those are some financial things that could be done to help the small scale developer, the infill projects, and maybe there's not enough incentives now, but I'm thinking that beginning objective is big enough if the funding is there to carve out things to do that. These are more like site specific, if you're developing new projects, things to help that project move along in a more quickly or less expensive way.
Yeah, I just want to
So,
make sure there's enough resources for a diverse group
Yeah.
of developers and investors. I know this may be controversial, but I would even go further and say something like another bullet point that says something like reduction or elimination of current legislative and proposed legislation that create increased risk for developers and investors. Because that's really what we're talking about is there's a lot of risk out there. And there's more and more risk, and who's willing to make the investments into these properties? I think that's missing from everything we're proposing.
Thank you.
Well,
And I don't know where to put it in, maybe it's just the area, but it,
yeah, well, I think if I go back to what I come to the beginning, the purpose of the whole entire thing was to go over what are the sort of the barriers with zoning reform, finances. So that small developer who is just looking to add an ADU or a townhouse, like has access to the Delaware Workforce Housing Program, which we passed last year. But those things are in there, especially in the finance end. It's really going to help those smaller developers. So we are by putting the financing package in there, we're investing in that Delaware Workforce Housing Program, mitigating some of that risk. I mean, that's the purpose of the financing. That's the purpose of the incentives. That's that is what we're trying to do by the overall process.
Accept these couple changes. All right, so are we done? Can we move on from number 6? All right. Number 7, develop construction workforce pipeline. Mike, if there's anything you want to add here?
No, I'm good.
We're good. I'm gonna accept this. Bam. All right. This is a suggestion from Jerry to add another objective. So
I can explain why. In the actual resolution that was passed, there was specific tasks related to this for the manufactured housing community, and it wasn't mentioned. I think it came up from Fred Neal or someone like that. So that's why I'm addressing it. If you don't want to do it here, that's fine, but it was specific. It's the only one that had a specific task in any of the subcommittees. So that's why I put it in there.
you will want me to scroll so we can read the whole thing?
Well, that's it.
Oh,
It's not
well then
more
never
to it.
mind. Okay.
It seems all right. I think other than the references to.
get the references out, but other than that.
Yeah, all right, I'll take out the references, just, that might be confusing to people.
So just to say it out loud to me, and then you can tell me if I got it right. This objective is to incentivize or support or promote the purchase of manufactured housing communities by homeowners, whether
Correct.
by providing some financial, some advisory services and financial assistance.
So
Is that the summary?
So the Manufactured Housing Relocation Authority actually has money. We talked about using some of the money for the advisory role for that, for the purchase. But the idea would be the state would maybe create a loan fund for them, probably would never be used, but if it would be for initial equity plug, because they can't come up with that much, given the cost of manufactured home communities today. So is that simple and just to look at?
Could we change the financial advisor to just advisory services?
Sure.
I just don't want people to be confused with, other has to be like financial advisors.
I'm sorry, where in the, we're doing it?
It's just advisory services.
Okay, so advisory services for homeowner.
I don't think we need the word homeowner or homeowners association
Yeah.
3 times. Just write for homeowners. With it.
Well, there's a difference, that's why we have a distinct, not all parks have homeowner
I know,
associations.
but the layperson is reading this.
That's fine.
Take them both out.
Okay,
For,
advisory
for,
services
for acquisition.
for acquisition.
Well, no, you have to say homeowners association.
It's under the town. By homeowners.
Oh, okay.
This is all under community acquisition by homeowners.
Okay, so advisory services for acquisition of manufactured home community. And state financial assistance for homeowner or homeowners.
Well, we're gonna delete it there too.
Yep.
Okay. State financial assistance for,
Yeah. What about the lead in paragraph? Do we leave it there or leave it there?
Yeah.
delete what?
You got it.
Yeah.
No, you have to leave the objective, but are we leaving it in the?
To ensure that homeowners or homeowners.
And the word
association-
homeowners has to have an apostrophe after the S.
So can I ask a question about the second one? So state financial stability.
See, it went away.
English.
They were trying to color out on it with the little underline.
Should we say existing part?
You can.
That's what it would be.
Well, it needs some grammatical error.
Existing. I agree with that.
Okay, where, I'm sorry, where am I putting that? I'm hearing too many. voices.
Second bullet.
Second bullet.
Okay.
State financial for the acquisition of an existing community.
Of an existing manufactured housing community. Community. Boom, okay. Do we like what we have in red? Yes? I'm accepting. Boom. All right. This is now renumbered number 9, but this is about optimizing and improving capacity of existing programs or processes. This is just a little wordsmithing I did to make it sound better, but we have some suggested additions, including identifying opportunities to educate more developers about DSHA products. That's from Amy. Working with DHSS to develop supportive housing. That's from Rachel. Those are the 2 additions to this list. We like them, we're accepting them. Great. I'll delete the comment bubbles later. All right.
The comment was, I don't know what the waiver process is, so
Oh,
I don't know if
sorry.
we just want to add a footnote about that or something, but it's just the waiver process. I was like, I don't know what that means.
Pretty general.
I'm just gonna put insert footnote. We can do that later. And then, can somebody please spell out DCM for me? Because I don't know what that means.
Development Coordination Manual is what it means, right?
Correct.
Let me get us back.
That's a big book that Del uses that all the engineers have to use and they don't
Take
like
the-
it and it's
Development
complicated.
Coordination Manual.
Development
Love it.
Coordination
Coordination, The Delaware.
Show.
Manual and Road Design Manual. Boom. All right, those were the only things for that section. Now we're on to additional considerations. So we have additional considerations around supports for short-term affordability needs, and then we also have some stuff for preservation. So.
So that one's obviously mine from our subcommittee.
Oh, this is the one I was expecting.
Yes.
That's the last.
The best, most fun for last. So obviously, we feel strong, our committee feels strongly that this is important for people who are currently being impacted by the housing affordability issue. Because of their lack of ability to pay, and that they shouldn't be penalized 10 years from now for having an eviction on their record sometime in the past 4 years when housing costs have gone crazy and incomes have not kept up. We think it's important. My understanding is that there are a lot of folks here that don't like it, and so it might be something that doesn't stay, but I'll let you, since I know we're working on a consensus model, it might not stay, but I'll let you
Rachel,
express your concerns.
I talked to Deb Burgos over the weekend and last couple of days, and I actually mentioned it to a couple other people. So I believe the affordable housing program is everybody's issue. So like with manufactured housing, we chip in landlord and tenant or homeowner to a fund. You're asking us to take on an obligation that we normally wouldn't take on. There's a financial risk here that's out of my wheelhouse. It's a liability. I want to be indemnified for it in a sense. I don't want that risk. You couldn't get a mortgage if you had this standard.
This is after 7 years. I thought that's very standard.
It depends on,
I thought that was a very standard.
no, it
timeframe
depends
for
on all the
things like-
there's characterization when somebody looks at a report that has a lot of evictions or a number of evictions. So we want to characterize it. So let's say it's the worst of the characterization and you're asking us to accept it. My thought is that we create a fund that indemnifies the landlord if this person blows out again on more evictions, and we get compensated for it. Because we want the discretion to decide whether to accept somebody, but if you're asking us to accept somebody by state law, we want to make sure we're made whole again. Because the only person who pays for it are future residents. we're gonna have to share that cost with everybody else who rents in our facility.
I understand that. I guess I just have, so I think this conversation will go a lot faster. I don't think arguing about it now is a great use of our time. I think that there's a lot of reasons, I could talk about this forever. And I think there are ways to craft legislation that controls for some of the potential challenges that landlords might face. That's not what this is. This is a very broad statement. So I hear you.
I'm for doing something.
I'm hearing we don't have consensus. Since we don't have consensus, it's gonna come out and we're gonna move on to the next one.
Would it go in the back?
Yes.
Yeah.
It already is, as long as it's in the back. I wish you could have brought it up sooner, Rachel, so that we could have actually had.
We did.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
That's what I knew.
She already left.
Okay, I already left.
This is a concern though, is that addresses one side of it. The balanced approach would have been, we have more conversation, maybe a rental task force or something to talk about these issues. Because
We're not production specific either.
what I just said is the risk management before, a small landlord, that, you just said spread it out against everybody in the community. What if you only have one unit? The risk is too high. We should be, an objective should be decreasing things that cause a disincentive to renting property.
And newsflash, if we had more affordable housing, we wouldn't have this freaking problem.
Right.
It is a rotating door. Why? People can't afford to live where they are. Do you think people want to be evicted? They don't. You don't have a home, you have nothing. And then we hold it over top of them forever. I will never get out of that hole if you don't help me.
Agreed.
Rachel, I can volunteer Jerry and myself to meet with you at some
Yeah.
other time.
Yeah.
And see if we
Me
can
as
find
well.
out kind of consensus.
We wanna solve.
Rachel, I'm also available as well.
That's all.
Deborah,
we got you.
We have enough
I'm
house
also available to discuss solutions to this.
for the decrease.
Deborah's also willing to meet too.
Yes.
Can we move on to the next bullets? Because we're running
Yep.
short of time.
Yeah.
Okay. This one was an addition by Jerry, so.
I would just say, take out manufactured housing, put all housing or whatever.
Okay, so greater availability of housing vouchers. Just period?
Yeah.
Or semicolon, great. Do we then need this one? Because that's
No.
also talking about vouchers.
So sorry, just for clarification on that one, because I think that one might be important before we take it out. The low dollar value voucher program, Jerry, do you just mean, so like what I would call a shallow subsidy?
Yes, I put that in.
Oh,
As a
sorry.
shallow subsidy based on
Yes.
our prior conversation that.
I love the idea
Some
of having
people
shallow
struggle.
subsidy vouchers. I love that.
We
So-
actually went into that in our committee, and the idea is to scale
Mhm.
vouchers, and that's what we need to do.
I think that'd be really helpful.
So scaling them
So-
is how we have to approach it.
So not low dollar,
Yeah, I just put lower dollar because I knew we talked about it, but I wasn't sure.
Shallow
how to,
subsidy?
But shallow subsidy.
I think scaling to income is the right approach.
I think all vouchers do that, don't they?
Yeah.
Scale to, yeah.
They should.
But
all
you're-
vouchers scaled to income.
Right.
I think what we're. It's
What are you talking
different.
about?
We're talking about people with higher incomes than what is currently allowed, right?
Or smaller subsidies, like, so for example, if you expand the SRAP program, it's really expensive because those are more deep subsidies for really low income people. But if you create a shallow subsidy voucher program, the cost per household is a lot less if you do it based on like. I'm 80% AMI, so maybe the voucher helps with 20% of your rental costs instead of 70%.
Would that be like a middle income voucher? Instead of low income?
So maybe a moderate income, but.
We've already defined where.
Yeah, I agree. I think targeting maybe should still stay in that group, but.
Yeah.
But I love that idea and I didn't want it to get crossed out right away before we talked about it.
Maybe just examine.
So in your definition
Also
section,
pay
just have
less.
a definition on shallow subsidy voucher.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're keeping the shallow subsidy. Somebody's gonna need to send me the words for the glossary. Okay,
It just be for all renters. Wraparound services for all renters.
for all renters, okay? Then we've got, I think these were specific to some of the ideas.
Right, the landlord essential services is to try to prevent another Adam Street from happening. Every 10 years, you would get an evaluation on the your apartment building or manufactured home community. If you had private septic and water, you would have to get that every 5 years. You put a report, we would create an ombudsman's office or something at Consumer Protection. You submit the report in April, it's got to be fixed in October. If it's not fixed, you can't do a rental increase. Very simple. We now insure some essential services if you eat water and so on. Nothing more than that.
This section is other considerations, right?
Yes.
So it already lives in the manufactured housing section. Are these recommendations already live somewhere else?
No, they don't live in manufactured essential services. It's not part of our nomenclature.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is it's,
You have a recommendation.
you footnoted in MH.
No, that's because it's referencing the proposal we put forth. I numbered each one.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right, so that still lives in the. I think we're looking for things that were outside of the task force.
Yeah, no, I actually would like that for all. I have the same bill written for apartments. I gave you that last year.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be concepts that you might have in other, there's gonna be concepts in other committees that are gonna be applicable to
Right.
all. But I'm saying, if we have other considerations, but we're just putting back task force recommendations.
No, I'm not. I wanted that for all rental properties, landlord essential services. Whether it was manufactured housing or non-manufactured housing.
So you're expanding it beyond. the committee
Yes.
recommendation.
All those would be expandable. Both products. All types of rentals.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back, so all of these live elsewhere. And,
Correct.
and I'm looking for other things that came from the general body. And not,
That don't live anywhere else.
that don't live anywhere else. And if it already lives somewhere else, I don't think we need to put it, because there's gonna be concepts that we see that you put out there, and we've talked about it before, that could end up into a general aspect of things instead of just your task force.
Does this entire section fall under that comment?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think the first couple are,
They don't need to stay, yeah.
I really.
But the tax credit
I
for
want the-
subsidization of renters, for example,
Renters.
that could just be for anybody. I mean, that's the whole point.
I think that.
I like the first one.
The first one's a big one.
A big number.
So this is the current affordability needs. That maybe are outside of the production
Correct.
bucket. Is that what we're really talking about here?
Yes, I think this is acknowledging that like, in the meantime, while we work on all these wonderful objectives to make more supply, we gotta take care of the folks that are currently struggling because of
Yes.
cost burden.
So. we can Make more of a statement rather than individual recommendations. About,
I think the broad statement's there, and then you have the specific, really the first one has to stay. Be hard to fund, I know, but
My opinion, I feel like the first full bullets cover everything without being too in the weeds.
And all of them are really directly making housing affordable for people now with basically a financial subsidy. They're not about like other issues than affordability. Way to think about it.
Yeah, I'm generally okay leaving the first four there and just deleting the stuff after.
The reason I argue for landlord essential services is that that's gonna be one of the biggest problems we have, given the age of the housing stock. And if it's not protected, people are just gonna end up having substandard housing.
I think that's, going back to the start, there's something still missing here about risk management and encouragement,
Right.
want to rent properties in the first place, develop properties in the first place. People need to actually do it. We're assuming there's gonna be enough people out there that want to provide these properties.
There are.
And I feel like it's missing in here.
Maybe when you're the.
so I would just maybe recommend, if you can scroll up just a little bit in the sort of preamble to this piece. I think that we want to make sure that we're really clear that the task force recommends short-term affordability supports, including, because I think there's a lot of other things that could.
Because
fit
the
into
essential
this.
services is not a short term.
Right, I mean, this is, it's supports for short-term, it's an acknowledgement that production is going to take some time, and in the meantime, we have to put some supports in place. I think that's a really valuable statement for the task force to make, the recognition of the sort of the arc of production. But these four things may or may not be all of it, and we didn't spend a lot of time. I could put centralization of homeless services or, we have expansion of vouchers. We could do, there's a lot of things that, other tenant protection issues. There's a lot of other stuff that are out there, right? I would maybe recommend that we include these as things, but acknowledge also that this was not a task force about making sure that we do something in between now and when production arrives. Does that make sense? So maybe we can make sure that, I like the very beginning of that, several subcommittees noted the need for immediate short-term supports. The task force recommends the following strategy. But acknowledges that others may exist, or others, I don't know, we'll have to find right words that kind of capture sentiment.
Yes.
That there may be other. Oh, recommends the following strategies to address current affordability needs, but acknowledges that there may be other strategies
We'll figure that out.
worth pursuing.
Put
Bam.
a little note next to that
Highlight.
we can go back.
We'll wordsmith.
Now, so I think the question then is there, are we thinking that it's the top four?
Yeah.
And the other things live as Huxtable said in the back recommendations. Okay, good.
Are we happy with short-term supports?
That's fine.
Great. Preservation, preserving existing affordable housing stock is critical, as the loss of such housing would add to the already significant shortage of units. The task force recommends pursuing the following strategies to facilitate preservation. This is what we originally had. Amy had suggested striking that and replacing it with this.
The reason I did was because when we talked about both of these items, I thought we said that the RAD conversions already had a restriction from HUD, so we were essentially duplicating something they were already addressing. And then on the home repair program for manufactured housing, it sounded like they were available for manufactured housing, but perhaps the outreach wasn't what it could be.
It can also be apply long-term deed restrictions to rental housing.
I can tell you when I did that program, the majority of the units were manufactured housing. I don't know if that's still the case, but.
The home repair, you mean?
Emergency home repair.
Yeah.
Right.
So are we happy striking these two bullets and putting in these two others? First question. Second question, do we need any other bullets?
I like this, the bullets that we're striking. I'm not sure that we need to strike them. It is I feel like here we're a little bit into value statements. So perhaps it's not expand the availability, but ensure the availability or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. But I thought the RAD conversion was already part of the HUD.
Apply long-term deed restrictions to affordable rental housing.
Yeah.
Might be a better way to.
Yeah, I think so too.
to-
Okay, so hang on. So we've got ensure the availability of home repair programming
Sure.
for manufactured homeowners.
And then the next one, keep the recommendation or the bullet, but change the red to a more general affordable housing kind.
Okay. Apply long-term deed restrictions to
And
affordable.
Karen, you mentioned the ability of like a community land trust model. Could it be long-term deed restriction or? What?
Affordability covenants.
Yeah, something like that. I was just trying to think about how, you mentioned the community land trust model, so I'm just wondering, should we put in there like apply long-term deed restrictions,
Such as?
covenants, or land
Covenants
trust?
or land or
Include long-term affordability strategies and
Yeah.
affordable housing.
Apply long-term.
Apply long-term affordability.
Research,
Strategies, yeah,
strategies.
yeah, because if you already own and you're doing to then put some stuff on me, then. Yeah. Oh, and that wasn't part of the whole financial.
Yeah, I just want to make sure however it's worded, it makes it clear that that's not what we're talking about.
And I'm sorry, is this all affordable housing, or is it specific to rental or homeownership? Is it everything to affordable
I
housing?
think it depends on the program, and so, I mean, we don't want to consider every single instance. I think what we're saying here is, we think that if we invest in affordable housing, there ought to be some long-term affordability tied to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
so you gotta have something about the state finance, because there's going to be natural occurring
Yes.
affordable housing. That this will lend the argument then to
Subsidized,
Broad-based.
let's call it subsidized and as opposed to.
rent
affordable.
restrictions. Yeah.
I would like to
Subsidized
see,
instead of affordable.
I would like to see the term direct investment rather than just investment, because somebody could say, well, I waived the traffic impact study for Jerry Heisler as part of the strategy, and that's an investment I made into your community. So I think it has to be.
Subsidized, I think maybe implies a direct investment.
I think you're gonna need more than just the waiver of that fee to make something work.
I know what you're saying.
We're expensive, I mean. these
Yeah.
traffic-
Okay.
That man.
Oh, boy. Are we okay with the language as it?
I feel like we're really talking about
Yeah.
the properties themselves. We're maybe still missing the people behind it providing it. Is there enough strategies, what we have talked about, to protect landlords to wanting to rent property, that single family wanting to rent out a property? Like, I feel like that's missing here. And I can't figure out the words, but preservation, this is about the property itself, but I want to preserve that someone's interested in renting a property in the first place, and that's missed.
I wonder if there could be something in the, so you know how the DSHA section about capacity building and programming? I wonder if there could be something added there that says like DSHA programming, financing, et cetera, should make sure to consider the needs of smaller property owners to ensure they can participate in some of these programs or something like that.
Right, I mean, that's the other thing, I mean, it's not just a DSHA, those were very DSHA specific, you're talking more globally, I think, about sort of in a market, yeah.
Well, speaking of that, there's a talk of rent control, and that's gonna chill any type of rental investment at all.
That's not a recommendation.
But that's a fear and a
That's the
disincentive,
center, and it's a disincentive.
and that's not even addressed.
Right,
So-
addressing the production of.
But who's gonna do it? The person behind it has to make a risk management decision. And things like that increase risk and take away the desire to provide the property in the first place. That's
Well,
being.
yes, so let's say that person wants to do a project and we're able to invest $1 million, we just mitigated a lot of risk. So
For
Okay, so I'm not sure how, I think I understand what you're trying to say, I'm not sure that there's a recommendation that you're proposing. And I don't know how we solve for that in the last 4 or 5 minutes.
Minus 9 minutes.
The last minute. So maybe we need to,
I think it's implied that a lot of these strategies are about incentivizing guys like me to go out and build more affordable housing, like. As one of the risk takers, I'm pretty comfortable with what this says.
I would suggest maybe in the just first paragraph findings and recommendations, say what Preston just said. That, a theme overall is that these things reduce risk for investment and production of affordable housing and make it more possible for investors to choose that as the option for their capital.
And provide incentives for both market rate and low income housing developers or nonprofit housing developers.
That could be a couple of sentences in the beginning, but then everything else to me, I think follows along with trying to reduce that risk and or make it more attractive for somebody to.
That's fine if you said that, but quite frankly, I think it's already understood and implied that that's why we're even doing this. Like, that's why we have this
But I think,
task force.
I'm going back to the representative's comment as well. I think, as we wrap up, are we close to wrapping up?
Yeah.
This is the last part.
Okay,
that
so
we
what I
need
would,
to decide on.
still no, okay, still no thought. Can you just scroll, can you just to make sure, can you just scroll down through the rest of the? Okay, right, all right,
Yep.
okay, so, thank you. I think we got through it. I mean, one of the things that I'd like to take back on the drafting piece is the representative's recommendation that we roll up into a super executive summary, the front of the book, probably at the objective level, a summary that is essentially a one pager. I think some some acknowledgement about, the goal, the very high level goal of creating an environment that is conducive to the production of affordable housing with our partners and alleviating risk, and something will be the opening paragraph to that. The objectives outlined at the sort of objective level. So with the task force's consent, I think we can go ahead and draft that. What I want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with is that from this point forward, we will draft the full report and recirculate it. If there are, major errors, fine, let's talk about it. We reserve the right, I think, to call the task force back together if there are major issues that we have for some reason not discussed, and that are horses that we have not beaten to death. But that we're not, and we will take comments on language, but not ideas. Does that sound right? That we're gonna do our very best to reflect everything that has been discussed and all of the things that we have gone through the last couple of weeks. We will put that forward to you in a final draft. Again, if we've missed commas, that's the right time for that. But let's not reopen ideas. If we reopen ideas, that's when we will reserve the right to call you all back in here and have them through. So feel free to, I think, propose that, but know that that's probably where we would have to go with it. That DSHA is not going to feel empowered to change the ideas contained, and hereby sort of concluded in this task force process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Deborah, a chance to
Yes,
chime in.
sorry, I didn't want to break in because I'm not there. It's hard to jump in. I think it's important that somewhere in this report, that we do focus on maintaining the existing rental stock. Unfortunately, we had a missed opportunity, but by not having a subcommittee for rental housing, which is 25% of the housing in Delaware. If we don't create incentives for investment and reinvestment into the existing rental stock in Delaware, we're going to compound the issue, because as you are building more, landlords are getting out of the business. So while there's no recommendation, perhaps somewhere in the strategy, somewhere in the general language, that we are making sure that we are putting in there that the preservation of existing rental stock is critical to this whole
We do have a little bit in
project.
the strategies, and I'll make sure that we put that at the very executive summary, along with the sort of other sort of philosophical, risk aversion environment, creating an environment for investment in affordable housing, that we recognize that preservation is important for us to move forward. Something, if I'm capturing your comment correctly.
It is, yeah. So the investment and reinvestment is important for maintaining not only affordable housing, but safe, affordable housing. If we don't have a good environment for reinvestment, you end up with an aging rental stock that's not safe for people to live in, which is not what we are in the business to do.
Okay, so Ken, I don't think we actually established this. Are we happy with the changes in the preservation section?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
I realize there are some members of the public with their hands raised. We did our public comment at the top of the meeting. We will still accept written public comments sent to housing.taskforce@delaware.gov. Any written comments received to that inbox within the next 48 hours will be appended to the meeting minutes for this meeting
Circulated to the members.
and circulated to the members. And yeah, with that, I think I have my to-dos, which is to clean this up and get it back all to you in short order.
Do we need to have a vote for anything for the
We not.
completion that we finalized?
Drunk consensus, yeah, clearly.
Okay, good, all right.
Now it's time to clap. Try and get a picture of this task force, and we've already lost some people.
Acknowledging the work not done, the
Not
great
at
work,
all.
content that we talked about that we will
Yeah.
carry forward.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vote by the motion. to adjourn.
Yeah.
Let's
The steps. Oh, thank you everyone online. Thank you.